I've got a wife and two kids, a girl and a boy aged 9 and 7. My job is I am a chief operating officer, which is essentially looking after 200 employees from both a people perspective, but also an operational perspective. And that's in a sort of marketing consultancy.
Okay. And enjoy the job? Enjoy the role?
Most days, yeah.
Challenging?
Yeah, it's been very difficult the last 2.5 weeks because moving 200 people to remote working whilst keeping all systems go.
Yeah.
We were quite reliant on a lot of tech, so getting all that working has been hard work, but the team have responded magnificently, I must admit, and we are all systems go.
Good, awesome. So we're going to go through some questions here, just really to draw out. One of the reasons I know that you have a past and you've shared that with me and you're quite happy to do that is, again, to really show men that they are not alone in the struggles of life and mental well-being and mental health awareness and just what you can come back from and achieve. And I think this story really will resonate with a lot of people, but inspire many people to really flip their life 180 and start making some changes. So first question is, what was your bad place and what did life look like?
Quite a big question to start with.
Straight in.
So, I'm 40 now, and I suppose from the age of about 19, I started to develop a depression.
Okay.
And that was a result really of going to university, doing a course that I didn't really want to do, but not really knowing where I wanted to go or what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And instead of talking to anyone or being able to express it, I basically hid it deep down inside and sort of turned to alcohol to cope. So I started to drink an awful lot. But then when I'd been drinking, I'd quite often come home and I started to self-harm.
Wow, okay.
As a sort of, because I had such huge frustration with myself. I was angry with myself. I felt like a failure. Felt like I wasn't living up to the person I should be or could be.
Okay.
And
that benchmark that you just mentioned there, where do you think that came from? Like, how did you? So when you talk about that person that you thought you should be, where was that? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's massive, particularly in the world we're in today. Is society places such an emphasis on sort of material success. So you've got to be earning a fortune, you've got to have the best car, you've got to have the hottest girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, you've got to wear the right clothes, you've got to have the right haircut, which I'm not affected by anymore. But so there's a huge emphasis by society saying this is who you should be aspiring to be.
Yeah.
And back then it was probably more, my father was a successful businessman. He had a successful, what I thought was successful, but, I've since learned he had his own challenges.
Yeah.
But there was this thing that you're taught at school that you got to be academically successful. You've got to then go and get a good career. You've then got to start earning lots of money and you've got to have a big house and all that sort of stuff. Okay.
And, obviously, we turned into drink to try and cope through that. So through this period of depression, how long do you think that kind of stemmed for? So you recognised it like in the very early 20s.
Yeah.
Did that boil on for long?
Yeah. So the way it worked was it got progressively worse. So I started harming myself worse. So to the point where I was admitted to hospital. Right. And actually, bizarrely, I had to go into hospital on the 23rd of December last year, and they printed out my medical records. And in it, as I read through, and I completely blanked this from my memory, was that I tried to hang myself in my 20s, and the police have had to sort of break into the house and take me to hospital. And I still have absolutely no recollection of it. Mainly probably because of the amount of alcohol I drunk, but also I think because I think my brain's shut it out.
I mean, to do that, your unconscious mind must have been very, I don't know, you must have almost got to that point where you didn't see a way out of that situation.
No, I dug myself in too deep in terms of thinking, how can I how can I get out of this and still not let everybody else down?
Yeah.
So go and do what I want to do, go and be the person I want to be, because I've been living that sort of fraudulent life for 7, 8, 9 years that actually I didn't really feel like I could get out.
Okay. And what stopped you from opening up from people? Was it kind of like maybe a young ego? Maybe it was like you didn't want to look like a failure. What do you think
Yeah.
it was for you personally?
I think it was that it was being absolutely terrified of being mentally ill. The stigma was still pretty big back then. You know, it's getting better now, but there's still a huge amount of stigma attached to it.
Yeah.
But actually, you know, once you almost admit it to somebody and try and get help, then you're almost, you know, admitting to everyone that you're not well mentally.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking to my dad, and it's awful. I used to phone him up in tears at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I remember saying to him, you know, I wish I had cancer, because people would then, you know, feel sorry for me or understand what I'm going through, because I just didn't see how I could admit it to the world and actually still be seen as a sort of valuable human being.
Yeah, I get that. It's almost that I think this is how I felt, I guess, when I went through my battle, was that it wasn't really a big deal. I guess that's what I used to think in my head. You know, so what if I'm struggling? Everyone surely is struggling, so nobody wants to hear that. And like you say, you bottle it up into this like little jar where you think, oh God, there's people who do have cancer, who have only got one arm, who've come back from war. Like, no one wants to listen to my battle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a huge sense of shame and guilt attached to it.
Yeah,
because you think, how dare you, who've had a privileged upbringing, whose parents are still together, who love you, who've supported you, you're at university, you know, you've got a good job, you know, you've got all these opportunities. How dare you feel like this?
Yeah,
the guilt is incredible.
And do you think that now, that period of your life, you've allowed yourself to deal with that period of your life to be able to move on, or is there still like part of that chapter of your life that still remains with you?
Now I do, but there's a reason for that, which is that so I'll quickly tell you a story. So I got married when I was 30, keeping a lot of this from my wife. Then we got married and I went on a 2-day bender as soon as we got back from the honeymoon, because I just felt I was an absolute fraud living and I didn't deserve to have her in any way, shape or form. So then I gave up drinking for 3 years, and then it slowly crept back in. And about 3 years ago, we had a big family holiday where I had a big falling out with my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
And I started drinking a huge amount because I just felt I'd lost the one thing that I almost could guarantee was my family. So I sort of affected my family in a sort of fairly negative way, and started drinking. And then I went on an all-night bender. I got back in. My wife was like, "Listen, you've got to choose. I can't keep going on like this." So actually, 3 years in August, I gave up drinking. And I haven't missed it or thought about it in a way of desiring it since, because that was the trigger when I finally realized at the age of 40 that I had so much to lose. I was so lucky to have not lost it already, that maybe this was my last chance to actually do something that would make me feel like I deserved to have the life that I could have and did have, to be honest.
Yeah. And that's very strong. And I think this is something I've done since I've done this job. Alcohol has been the biggest turn to for a lot of the men that I've worked for, or with, should I say, in terms of that falling back into, you almost become a different identity once you've had a drink, and you almost can convince yourself that everything is rosy, that everything's great. Sometimes you almost end up getting endorphins, like in your mind. You're like, oh, life is great, life's brilliant. And you wake up with that pitiful reminder that nothing's really changed and it was that temporary hit. And that is what I find, is that feeling, not necessarily the alcohol, but that feeling is the addiction of that. Actually, this is the only time that I feel comfortable in my own skin. It's the only time I don't feel like a fraud, or I don't feel like I'm bothering everyone. I feel on top of the world, which again has massive consequences in terms of family, health, and well-being, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we looked at that. So life was pretty kind of bleak, and so we met your wife at 30, and you've had children since.
Yeah.
Okay, and so how did you deal with life when the children came along?
So when my first child was born, I gave up drinking.
Brilliant.
So for 3 years, because I knew that I couldn't be a responsible father, behaving like an absolute lunatic.
Yeah.
So, but then it just sort of came back in, and I think, you know, the people around me sort of hoped that I could still drink, because I am, you know, quite outgoing and some would think funny. So, you know, when I have a few beers, I can, you know, that sort of comes out a bit more. So I am quite good fun to have around. So, you know, I don't even remember Friends. I think people were worried that I'd be like Fun Bobby from Friends, who who was an absolute legend when he'd had a few beers, but when he was sober was the dullest man known to mankind. So, and that was a fear I had as well. But so it sort of snuck back in, and I took a handle on it. You know, kept a lid on it. But then it just gets worse. It escalates. If you are an addictive personality like myself, and definitely have a difficult relationship with alcohol, you can't control it. There'll always be episodes.
Yeah, I agree. Like even the slightest temptation on any addiction, 9 times out of 10, it's, you know, you're almost going to end up falling foul to it. So it's interesting. And a point that I wanted to pick up there was that the people around you almost wanted you to drink. So do you think that, number one, do you think that the people around you or your environment of your circle, friends and stuff, has changed because of the way that you've changed? And do you think that a particular group that you used to hang around with would almost be that temptation to slip off and drink and booze and have fun?
Yeah, I mean, I was playing a lot of team sports, rugby and football. So as soon as you do that, you go out and you get pissed with your mates. So, you know, that's completely gone now because I'm too old.
People.
Yeah, the people have gone as well.
Okay, so big sacrifices to get where you are today in terms of that, and recognizing that.
Yeah, and just spending time differently with friends. So I play golf with my mates now. You know, I do a lot of running, so I'll maybe go for a run with one of my mates. But you know, I've never needed lots of friend time because I have interaction at work. I have my wife and kids, so I don't need a best mate. I think some people do. I don't.
Yeah. Well, your wife's probably your best mate, right?
Yeah. She's someone I can talk to.
You have to say yes.
Her banter's a bit ropey, but you know.
Yeah, but I recognise that. I really do recognise that in terms of I'm very much the same. I look at Jem as my best mate. I hope you heard that, but I genuinely do. Like, I'm very much like you, and that military environment that I used to be in, I think had a lot to play in terms of my downfall, because I never really, you know, that thing you do when you're 18 to 25 and you're a bit of a bachelor and a bit of a lad. I never did that, and then suddenly become a physical training instructor in a staff room full of 20 alpha males. And you're trying to fit in, and do you know what? I see it with my daughter now, who's 14, and she's trying to fit in with all her mates and being someone she's not. And ironically, since isolation and being withdrawn from that group and that environment, she's back to the girl that I know. And it's very interesting when you put yourself out of a loop or a circle, very much how different you act. And I truly believe the 5 people that you spend your most time with, and this is not just physically, but virtually, represents the passion and drive that you end up having. So like the top 5 people that I listen to, if you like, whether they're right next to me here or whether I'm listening on an audio, sets this tone of how I'm going to live my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to slip on to the next one. So we talked about how you fell into that depression. into that drinking. What do you think? Was there one particular turning point, or was there a period of time when it suddenly the penny dropped and you went, this just needs to stop? Whether there was something specific that happened?
Yeah, it was coming back at 4 a.m. with 82 missed calls or whatever, and my wife just being like,
yeah,
no more.
Okay. And what do you think changed this time compared to other times maybe that you've tried to come off the booze, where you actually felt like you could change? Do you know what I mean? So like a lot of what I mean by that is that a lot of guys will say, I want to change. I need to change the way that I'm living my lifestyle. But they end up yo-yoing and falling back, as you know, as you probably know, I know, everyone knows. But there's like that one point. What do you think was the underlying like point that you didn't fall back off this wagon now?
I asked for help, and I went to see a psychologist and psychiatrist, and did CBT.
Oh, great. Okay. And how was that?
So it was the first time that I've ever spent real time, well, the first time in my life then, to actually think about who I was and why I was that way, and who I wanted to be.
Okay. So would you say that going to see that person took you from a point of being maybe semi-conscious about what you're doing to be fully conscious of all the actions that you were taking?
Yeah, and it gave me some reasons why I was the way I was. So, you know, I'm not going to go through all my childhood traumas, but it lets you analyse and understand why you react in certain ways to certain triggers. So alcohol for me was a way of basically covering up my absolute fear of being left alone.
Okay.
And the reason I did, because if anything happened that triggered me, so I don't know, my boss said this piece of work was good and not excellent, then I'd be like, oh, I'm going to lose my job. And then I think, no, my wife's going to leave me and my kids are going to leave me. And then my parents won't ever speak to me ever again. No one will talk to me. And it sounds ridiculous, but that's the sort of, you know, subconscious chain reaction that happens. And then you just go...
Ripple effect, isn't it? It just goes right through. Ripple effect. And would you say that's almost sometimes that to a point where you're living in constant fear, and maybe
absolutely
triggers that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're always scared because you fear the worst, and it's such a huge irrational fear that you have in terms of, you know, think through it. Even if you lost your job, your wife's probably not going to leave you. And if she does, she's probably not the right person anyway. So if you rationally think through, it's fine, but it's because you haven't taken the time to really think that through. So that's when, you know, doing your self-audit, for example, that'll be the first time that a lot of men will have ever sat down and thought about their life and split it in the 4 ways you do, and thought, what am I doing and why am I doing it? You don't need to go and see a psychiatrist, you know, that was my route, but actually just having the courage and having someone hold you accountable to hold yourself, you know, to analyze yourself is incredibly valuable, because I don't think many men out there will have done that.
No, I don't. Which is one of the things we put in. So, like, you joined our 5-day. Did you join us in October time, November time?
It was. It was maybe a bit earlier, maybe July-ish.
Yeah, so I know it was going into autumn. I remember, because I was in my office doing the things. But how did you feel when had you read my book before coming in? And if not, what was whatever your experience was of the life audit, and when you did your numbers, do you remember your numbers, or do you remember how you felt when you did your numbers?
Yeah, so I hadn't read your book. I always thought people that read those books were losers, and that was probably why I was in that position. Because I didn't think, you know, it's almost that if you accept there is a weakness, then, you know, you're weak, which is ludicrous. And then the self-audit, I remember thinking through it, and because I'd given up drinking sort of 18 months before, I was already on that journey. So and I'd had that sort of self-discovery with the CBT. I remember thinking, actually, almost 2 schools, one before doing that and one where I was now, and I was getting better, but I was still had a long way to go, particularly in personal development.
So Matt said that yesterday as well. That's interesting you say that as well. He said that was the most difficult when he did it, because and what we talked about yesterday was that when we finish university or college or whatever standard of education we go through, we suddenly just stop on ourselves. And it's the same with the planning and the structure that we have in those establishments. And then we suddenly come out. And again, you know, you're left to your own devices to try and figure out the world.
Yeah.
And we don't self-educate ourselves. And a lot of the time, somebody said to me this the other day, and I kind of knew it, but I didn't. And they said, I'm 44, but it's almost like I'm learning to educate myself to live again. And it's a fair comment, because actually we are, because we suddenly go through having children. I don't believe that many men go through their period of life between 30 and 44 without having going through some mental well-being issue of feeling down or low, losing their identity somewhere along the way, losing their fire and path and direction, and not really knowing about how to live their life. How do I get the best out of myself? How do I be a better dad? How do I lose my gut and be fitter? And it is a kind of a re-education, and that kind of slips in from actually being more aware. And I think it's the first groundbreaking factor for many men in flipping their life 180 is looking in the mirror and going, I'm not up to scratch here. This is not how I pictured my life. And I have to accept that, I'm at the bottom of the pile right now. And that was the power of the life audit for me. And that's the power that I wanted to have for many other men.
Yeah.
Cool. So would you say that between that point there and where you are now, that personal development has got better for you? And what do you do for personal development in that respect?
Yeah, I think Matt said it yesterday, where you need to learn to be selfish almost again. And it's not, and actually, but I'd go on that and say, you're not being selfish by making yourself a better personal version of yourself. And I think that's where the personal development issue falls in, is because there's this sort of hero image of a father that sacrifices everything for his family, and holds them on his shoulders and carries them forward and gives them everything and sacrifices everything. So actually, you do neglect yourself.
You do, 100%. I see it, and that for me is a stigma that has been brought up through society. Like, the man must be the strong one. The man must be the breadwinner. The man must be like carrying everybody when they need to, and you heap responsibility on yourself. And actually, you're absolutely right. It's not selfish. We think it's selfish because we don't know any different. We haven't been brought, again, re-education. You are allowed to have some time to yourself. You are allowed to get up in the morning and go to the gym. Don't have to be on it every single second of the day. And it would be, if I was doing the mum coach, it would be the same for mums. Mums deserve that time to themselves. They need that for their mental well-being as well. And both parents, and that's where two parents or two adults come together to communicate and work together to make sure they get their own time. Yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's have a look here. So what did you, so what were your beliefs, say 10 years ago, compared to your beliefs now? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the biggest change, two things: expectations and sort of perspective of weakness.
Okay.
So with expectations, I think probably every man will look at his life and think, I should be doing better. But actually ask those men, well, what does better look like and why will it be better? I think a lot of people will struggle to answer that, because more money, okay, well, why is that better? What are you going to do with it that's going to make you genuinely feel better? And yes, obviously everyone would like an extra £1 million and, to go on nice holidays. But actually, really, if you really think about it, is it going to give you that happiness? And actually, is it realistic to set yourself that expectation? So yeah, you can set yourself an expectation of, in 12 months time, I would have liked to have got promotion, like you do a lot with the guys, and work your way towards that. But just having that hazy expectation of I should be doing better and I should be some sort of, millionaire, pop star, rugby player, whatever it is you're thinking about, is unrealistic. So you have to set some realistic expectations. So that's definitely something I've changed. So much so that actually I've decided I don't want to be a CEO.
That's huge as well.
Yeah, because I don't want that responsibility of 200 to 1,000 people all resting on me.
Yeah.
Because work will start to consume me. I'll start to neglect my family. I'll start to neglect myself. And then I'll probably find myself back in the situation I was in sort of 5 years ago. So
and that is a sacrifice, right? Because obviously for you, I think that turning point has come that actually my family is more important to me. My life, my health, my mental well-being is more important to me than the salary.
Yeah, or the status. I think it's a status thing. I've always, I genuinely don't care really what people think of me.
Yeah.
Someone down my road thought I was a plumber or a builder, which is absolutely fine because I'm always walking around in a trackie which has got shit all over it. So, and I drive an awful car. So those sorts of things don't bring me fulfillment.
No, I get it.
So why would I be striving to be earning more, which brings more pressure, more stress, when actually I don't need it?
And this is where again we are very similar in alignment, but I fell foul of that over my 7 years of running a business, always watching the people that are trying to teach you to go out and earn the money, go out and make the money. So my mentality was, yeah, let's do it, let's earn it, let's have a great big house, and then suddenly I was like, no, like I literally, I have to fight my business coach and my mastermind to say, look, I'm happy where I am. Like, I don't want to explode this into the next, be the next thing or the next Joe Wicks or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? I'm quite happy low key with the men that we've got, keeping it nice and contained, because to me, it's lifestyle. And the reason I come away from working down on my boot camp to being online is so that I could be here with the family, go out when we're allowed out, to go to the park and do my stuff and have my routine. Where bigger and better, which most men want, just brings more stress and frustration. And I'm really relate to what you're saying there, and it's like an excellent point as well. And it's one that many men who actually are in the mastermind have actually said that to me. This is not what I want to do. I'm not happy in this role. And I think with, if you were unhappy in your role and you were not willing to sacrifice that, you think to yourself, you've got another 20 to 25 years in that job role. And that is that's a lifetime of misery of staying in that same role and not changing. Which as you get older, we then end up tempting the niggle, I need a drink. I'm stressed, I'm frustrated. So I think applauds to you, mate. And what was the other thing that you mentioned that was different in your thinking?
Perception of weakness.
Okay.
So, or failure maybe is a better way of describing it, but actually not being an absolute legend at everything does not mean you are a failure, or you are weak, or you are less of a man, or, any of those things, because you see all these motivational, you've got to fail and fail forwards and da-da-da-da, but actually how many people really believe that, and how many people look at failure and go, right, what can I genuinely learn? Or do they just shut it, somewhere deep inside and never think of it again? Because, I don't like failing. I don't like getting stuff wrong, but I'm much less scared of it now.
That's good. And I think fear, and one of your things was fear. That was one of your things that was creating a lot of your depression and stuff. So I think what is incredible is that, like, the turnaround, the 180 that you've done in terms of, I think internally, neurologically, you've definitely reshifted the goalposts in terms of the way that you see the world and the way that you see you in that world to be more fulfilling and purposeful for you. If you think about how far we come from the 5-day and what you've achieved in that time. I mean, so when did we have our phone call when you were in Italy? Obviously before everything happened.
Yeah. September last. That was September last year.
I can't believe how quick that's gone. And that was a big mind shift change, I think, for you when we had our conversation. So
yeah.
Tell us what you're going to be doing now and the mind shift that you had in terms of like, because you're killing it now, like literally, you've got to probably be the best, well, second best runner in the group.
After you.
I'm more jiu-jitsu now, but yeah. So tell us this turnaround.
Well, it was, so I've been on the 5-day and the 28, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Or,
it was just the first 28-day group, I think we changed.
Yeah. So I've been on that, and obviously the impression you get is that everyone's an elite operator or some sort of ninja. So, you know, I was thinking, well, and the reason I was there was because I felt like I plateaued in my self-development from stopping alcohol, getting myself back on, on the right track. And I felt like I needed more. So I spoke to you, and I wanted to be able to look in the mirror and be proud of the man who's standing back looking at me. And, you know, I've got a great career, I've got a great family, all that sort of thing. But unless you genuinely look at yourself and go, you know, you're a bit of a legend, then, you know, it sounds arrogant, but I think everyone wants to be able to do that. So it was always been sort of physical achievement. So I played a lot of sport, you know, I've been quite good at various sports in my youth, and sort of done representative rugby and all that sort of stuff. And I hadn't really done anything sort of physically impressive since I was like 20.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do something that I thought, you know, not many people have done that. So I spoke to you about potentially running a 100k race, and then you made me go and sign up for it that day and send you proof by a photo that I'd done it. And I hadn't even run a more than 10k in my life, I don't think, at that point.
When is it? So is it September?
September, yeah.
The whole year to train, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't gonna just, you know, I was realistic in terms of I can't run.
Yeah.
So I've got to actually train to do it, and that's part of it. I think you read a lot of stuff where it's like, it's not about the destination, it's all about the journey, and all, you know, it's all a bit that. But actually, there is truth in that, because the sort of journey I'm on is the motivation and discipline needed to run a lot and to keep going even when you don't want to do it, and to have that big goal in sight, because you cannot fake 100k.
No.
You know, you just can't do that. And I'm quite bright. I've always been able to wing quite a lot of things. So I wanted something where I genuinely had to work hard for it rather than wing it. So that's the big thing I set. Hopefully it will still go ahead. If it doesn't, then I'll find something else. But I'm already reaped a lot from setting myself that big target and working hard for it and not quitting. Quitting is massive for me now.
Yeah, that's huge. And it builds. So like, I really recognize and resonate everything you're saying, because I mean, I've done 200 milers and I did them for the exact same reason that you are talking about. I ironically did my second 100 miler because I wanted more focus in life, not to run the 100 miler. And what happens with parallel was that you're here, disciplined, showing up, doing your running, but ideally your game at work, your game in your routine and your structure and your family life goes up as well. And I noticed that my performance levels once they were going up for the running, were going up for everything else as well. And you know, sometimes when you do a 4, 5, 6 hour training run, that's 4, 5, 6 hours that you're listening to positive people or inspirational people via audio books and personal development. And that almost seeps into your DNA and you become like next level. And I think, you know, that's very much what you're talking about. And you did 200 miles in February or more?
220 200 something K, not miles. I don't think I quite got to 200 miles. And I listen to Boyzone when I'm running anyway. So
love it. What would you say in the last 10 years the two biggest changes are in your life that create Duncan now? What are the two biggest fundamental changes?
Expectations, definitely.
Yeah.
Giving yourself a break, allowing yourself just to be human.
Yeah.
Matt
spoke about that yesterday as well. He, if it doesn't happen, so it doesn't happen every day, right? Some days it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And the bounce back ability is the difference, because you understand the process. This is like you and me, we're both in our 40s, very early 40s. We've got another 40, 50 years ahead of us to achieve so much. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's really...
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's if you have a bad day. So if you get up and you're supposed to do a workout or go for a run and you don't because you can't be arsed and you feel like shit, and then you have a Mackie D's, you know what? Draw a line under it.
Yeah.
But then in the evening, say to yourself, right, I was a fat fucker today. So tomorrow I am going to get up and I am going to do that workout. I'm going to work hard at it. And actually you'll derive much more satisfaction from doing that than actually if you actually do sort of turn up every day, because if you're turning up every day, it's not difficult enough.
No. I don't show up every day. Like some days you just don't feel like it. Do you know what I mean? And my schedule has to change all the time, a routine, but based on how I'm feeling a lot of the time. No one is capable of being on it 100% all of the time. But the way that you bounce back defines your character, I feel, and your drive and your direction that you're going. And that's the biggest difference for many, many men, because what would tend to happen, and we won't let it happen with you, but a lot of people who would do 100-mile or 100K or a half marathon, and they spent a year, 6 months, 4 months dedicating time and energy to that. Once that happens, there's an era of depression that comes at the other end of that.
Yeah.
What we have to be super aware of with you in terms of, right, we have to plan already in June, July, what's next. And that is the difference, that forward thinking, I think, from the difference between when you maybe have a coach or someone that is holding you accountable, or you're being part of a peer group, or having improved yourself, you recognize those things. And the difference between somebody who's trying, does something, the number, if I had £1 for every time I heard a guy saying, I just fell off the wagon, I just fell off it and fell into that hamster wheel of life, so to speak. What would you say a second change would be?
The second thing, definitely, and I've mentioned this earlier, is define your happiness, analyze your happiness, challenge what you think and write about what will make you happy. Because if you can really get that down to something quite specific, you have your life motivation right there. You know what you want. So if it is to be a multimillionaire, then I've got no issue with that. Go for it. So what do you need to do and what do you need to sacrifice? It gives you that focus. If you want to be the best dad, which a lot of us are in here for, what is it that you need to do? What are you going to do that's going to make you a better dad?
Yeah.
Planning time with your kids, all those sorts of things. So define what it is that makes you happy and be brutally honest, because if it's cocaine and hookers, you know what? Why not?
Dig out.
If that's what it is,
yeah.
But then if it's actually making sure your wife doesn't leave you because you're turning into a massive fat slob, then actually do something about that. But I don't think enough people in the world do it. They just chase that social media. This is who you should be. This is the legend of the year. This is who you should be aspiring to be. And actually it's all bullshit.
I feel that thing that you're talking about should be the thing to be able to get you up in the morning and get you going. Like that. And I think that I don't really believe in the meaning of life or anything like that. But I think the ultimate success is to be able to wake up each day and know exactly what that happiness is. And know it. it's the first thing you think of, and it's the one thing I've been deeply battling with for the last 2 to 3 years. And it's not to say, I don't love my missus, I don't love my kids, but sometimes I end up letting, or have let, the success of my business dictate the success of me. Like, do you know what I mean? So if everything's going well with business, great, everything's going well. And if the business is not going well, then everything else is going awful. And I was like, well, I don't want to live that material life, or that fraudulent life. I want to live like, say, as long as my daughter can look at me and give me a kiss every single night and say, I love you, that's more impactful than anything. Do you know what I mean? I go and be a postman if I needed to, less pressure. And I think about being a postman every day. Sometimes
you do. You always talk about it.
I always do. Perhaps it's going to be my retirement job. Sometimes when you have those days, you just go, fuck this. I'm just going to be a postman, or go and work in Costa and socialise with people in the morning, and then go to the gym at 12 and come home and chill with the family. Honestly, I think about that all the time. But yeah, it's a crazy world. Right, quick fire round. You probably already know some of these because you've had to listen into the guys. So it's the first thing that comes into your head. Okay, then it's nothing messy. Okay, you ready? You've got like a split second to answer. What makes you happy?
James Bourman.
What makes you sad? That should have been
James Bourman.
Come on, right, let's go again. Right, what makes you happy?
Family.
What makes you sad?
The situation.
What makes you angry?
Bullies.
Good. Fight or flight?
Fight.
Woo! Biggest ambition in life?
To leave the world with 2 great little people in it.
Amazing. What percentage are you running at now?
70.
And a final message for anyone listening.
It would definitely be cut yourself some slack and define your happiness.
We'll finish on that. Mate, fantastic story. We'll talk when we come off air. Thank you very much for coming in. Guys, if you're listening and you want to come and join us on the 5-day challenge, the link's in the bio, or just reach out to us if you need some help or you're unsure. We're always here to support you guys. All right, take care. See you soon.
Cheers.
Mate, that was awesome.
Good.
How do you feel?
I've got to that point now where I spent so long worrying about what people will think about me if they knew what was going on in my head, that I'm actually sort of making up for lost time and telling as many people as possible. So this is all part of that mission in terms of.
You should be a coach yourself.
I do a bit of it at work.
Oh dear.
I do a bit of it at work, and I get immense satisfaction out of it. And that I've just changed my role to be responsible for all people at work.
Yeah, you're like absolutely kill it. Yeah, absolutely kill it. I think it wouldn't be a shortfall to say that someone listening to that will probably end up saving someone's life, I reckon.
Well, that's what that is. I gave a talk at work in January,